So I did a piece yesterday on the crisis of trust in America. Did you know that 50 years ago, over 80% of Americans trusted the federal government? And today, that number's under 20%. Not only is it under 20% for the government, it's under 20% for law enforcement, it's under 20% for our institutions, it's under 20% for our corporations, even our neighbors.
Where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
With the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that.
We have an economy that's, a society that's failing, and when it comes down to what to do next, there's no reason to actually revolt and, get up guns and try to overthrow the system. It's collapsing under its own weight, right? And this idea of this particular video is to propose simply building a parallel system for just something that actually appeals to people who are seeking an alternative to what really exists now and what permeates society today, right? And this particular concept is called the Foundry. And it's parallel, but it actually utilizes strategies within the current system. And with the Foundry in particular, it is based off of two particular strategies. One is community land trust. For those that don't know, it's essentially an entity that can basically, a nonprofit entity usually, that buys land and can create permanently affordable housing. And this particular idea, or permanently affordable housing, or actual just permanently affordable ownership for even businesses and buildings and farms in general. But that's one. The second one is special economic zones. And for those who don't know, this is kind of diving into the whole quote-unquote freedom city concepts. Even I would assume that this is very similar to the 15-minute cities concepts as well, right? And it has a lot of, in terms of here, for those who know about special economic zones, they would, maybe be a bit confused about why that would really lead to a better society in any way, shape, or form. But this concept, in terms of special economic zones, it's been used by corporations, and usually to essentially strip away the rights of workers and basically favor the corporations and lead to more investment in an economy by large corporations mainly. But what it does do in terms of the actual fundamentals of what a special economic zone does is it provides a regulatory sandbox. And that's going to be really what's important here, because when it comes down to economic situations and changes that need to occur, we're looking at essentially something that can become a laboratory for the people. And that's essentially what we're looking for here. So this idea of basically existing, working, living, and actually providing different models for how we do this whole society thing. Special economic zones can really provide a very strong framework for us to essentially expand out of. These are the two main models, and it folds over into this idea of innovative housing, right? So the special economic zones, that's something that's kind of geographically constricted to one particular area, and the community land trusts are essentially the model that we use to expand outside of that area into other areas in terms of how we can actually move and expand outside of this particular whatever particular geographic zone that we've actually accumulated. But innovative housing, this is going to be heavily linked to the idea of the laboratory that's kind of provided with special economic zones, and also it's going to be really linked to essentially the community land trust and how we can kind of incentivize other people and neighboring people to really buy in and really support the community land trust, because a lot of what prevents innovative housing is what they call the NIMBY community, right? So that's for those that don't know, it's not in my backyard. That's essentially the actual name that's been placed on this particular pattern of behavior by usually older residents, but usually older, richer residents will essentially find ways to block what has been called high-density housing. But when it comes down to innovative housing, or rather, I should call it innovative development, right, in terms of just how we approach these particular neighborhoods, that's going to really, really help us in terms of really play the balancing act between essentially having community land trust buy particular properties and utilize particular properties and appeal to the outside community or respect the rights and basically the rights of any community outside, and really try to live in synergy with them. There's a lot here. If you want to know more, I mean, I can literally probably talk for hours about just the type of innovative developments and things like that. I'm actually, in terms of my actual career path, it's really more so into the architecture, engineering type field or whatever, but I've been kind of like just looking and really just loving the innovation that can occur outside, and I have actually kind of a lot of different strategies to appeal to this particular community. So this might be honestly one of my stronger suits in terms of actually spanning out and helping provide support to this particular network. But this idea of what we do and how we span out, how we take this model, the special economic zone, what's happening here is this laboratory environment. We're incentivizing people to form groups and basically talk and basically what we call the groups are actually called guilds, but the guilds would actually come together and be able to essentially create plans to expand out, and there's going to be a framework to where they apply through the actual, special economic zone to basically acquire land through the community land trust, and through that application process, they're going to refine their vision in terms of how this will actually function and look, how it, we're going to talk about basically how the county would regulate this particular environment, how things would be built, but it's going to be very, very structured in terms of how this actually expands out from the actual special economic zone. And this is going to be, a really huge part of this whole thing in terms of the idea of guilds in general, right? And housing, of course, purchasing through the community land trust, housing, but also businesses, also land in general, right? How are things how things actually move. The motor of the Foundry is the people in terms of the actual locals in general. That's this whole thing, right? So the idea of the Foundry in general, it's a platform. That's very important. It's a platform for the Renaissance. It's not necessarily a Renaissance in general. The Foundry in a particular area is meant to symbolize the availability of opportunity, right? Because and that's kind of what we're looking at here. Because when we talk about the system now in terms of what's really collapsing, it is the advertisement is very clearly failing in terms of the idea of opportunity for people who are just willing to actually go about and do anything. And this is, it's kind of just where we're at today in terms of, you have a lot of people who are saying and who are very disconnected from the lives of younger peoples, or people who haven't grown up with very rich parents, to understand that this isn't we don't have the opportunity as our grandparents, right? And the idea is it's essentially been a Ponzi scheme that they've been handing off to the next generation and the next generation. And that's what we're looking at today in terms of today, how we're currently experiencing now. And we can't keep it like this, and that's going to require us to essentially take advantage of what we have in the framework of the Constitution to take the reins and control our destiny, right? Because the Foundry, ultimately it is essentially what America should have been, right? The advertisements of America, right? If you enter into the Foundry and you are willing to just try and provide provide a real effort towards something, things will happen, right? You will move in a certain direction, and this is. In terms of how we do that today, it's going to be very heavily linked to the community around you, connecting to your particular neighborhood, connecting to your neighbors, connecting to the locals, and connecting to and basically forming support systems to really overcome where we kind of put ourselves and placed ourselves today. And it's most certainly possible, and it's not even that's not a stretch of the imagination to even say that it's possible. It's just a matter of actually people coming together in a room and deciding to do something and provide a framework for it. So now, in terms of the actual people coming together and moving outside of the Foundry and basically forming different units of whatever may happen. It's not necessarily I don't have a structure in terms of how to really incentivize the formation of guilds and the incentives of the Foundry. I think there's going to be really a lot of legal advice that I'll need in terms of actually forming this particular idea, or even providing a template, right? And that's another thing. This Foundry, this idea, it is a template. It's another important thing that you guys have to realize. It is a template meant to be introduced to communities that decide to form a think tank, right? And this is not going to be a ivory tower think tank where all of the the wealthy business people or the successful small business communities get together and decide things. This is a think tank in terms of a very mixed group of nonprofits. There's going to is the think tank has to essentially be a socioeconomic melting pot in itself, right? In terms of what kind of subset of people would be involved in this particular think tank is very important. But in any case, it's meant to be refined by individual think tanks and the local groups, right? The Foundry is it's a system, and every single individual development is going to look different based on the locals, based on how the locals decide to do things, right? So there are going to be specialty cities, specialty organizations, specialty guilds that come up and essentially, could most certainly attract national or international attention, but you want to do this in the in the right way. And a part of this particular framework is also going to include really opportunity for really small businesses, entrepreneurs, and artists in general. And this is huge because when the Foundry comes to an area, just even in just getting places to and pressure put on essentially just politicians to bring in this framework, it's very important because the Foundry is essentially going to be known as society currently exists today. It'll be known as a small business incubator, right? And that is, there's a lot that goes into that too. I can also talk for a while about that, but I want to keep this video a bit short. But if you want to learn more or ask more about kind of the template that I have in mind, you can put that in the comments. But the idea here is that it's going to have an incentive structure for the people who benefit from affordable housing to support small businesses and also farms and artists in their community. Like I said, there's a lot here, and I don't want to trip up in terms of start talking and get caught in a rabbit hole, honestly. This idea, when we talk about introducing this to different politicians, or just in the form of just any type of policy in general, there is a draft for a template right now, and it's not refined yet, but it's still it still does kind of have at least the spirit of what kind of we're trying to really do here. And this is really just for more so the formation of course, the actual zone, the community land trust company in terms of how the zone expands out, and also the formation of a state-owned bank. And this right here, I want you guys to I want people to understand the different, I'm not going to talk all, the people who don't understand the difference between a state-owned bank and kind of what we have now. You should definitely look it up. If for any reason in your mind you're thinking, wow, this sounds like communism or something like that, you should most certainly look it up and try to understand what we have currently, because just to let everybody know, for anybody who doesn't know, J.P. Morgan enabled Jeffrey Epstein by to the entire world market, and that can't be understated. That was his power. That was exactly, like, in terms of his ability to get into the financial market and not be flagged for a lot of the things that he was doing. That they were very instrumental in terms of how he was able to move around without being flagged, and just without just essentially being arrested, period. But that idea of what we have today they're less they have a lot less, these large banks, they have a lot less incentive to really care about creating just unique centers of just the locals, creating unique businesses and things like that. These large banks don't care about the small local populations. What they care about is their friends. What they care about is the literal people. They'll enable the military-industrial complex. They'll enable the big oil. They'll enable every single entity that's responsible for essentially poisoning, and of course the tech oligarchs, but they'll enable all of these people who are essentially responsible for poisoning society. State-owned banks do essentially now I won't say the exact opposite, but they have a very strong local-centered pressure to essentially do right by the people in that community. And there's a stronger pressure to do that, and there's no reason that these large banks should even be honestly in existence at this point, especially after that came out about J.P. Morgan and Epstein. I feel like the attention on that matter should have completely stripped them of any type of power, period. But anyway, this is this template. This is what we're talking about in terms of actually introducing this into different places, and it's going to help us really formalize this idea of a parallel economy, because it does need to start to form, and this is the best way to form it, because it's important, because like I said, the idea of a revolution going out with weapons and assault rifles and everything like that sounds like appealing, to people who have kind of this whole apocalypse. Have this whole apocalypse mindset, and I want people to understand, it's not nearly as appealing. It won't be nearly as appealing in real life, because people will suffer. It will not be fun. It will not be. A lot of us haven't really had to experience hunger, true hunger. We haven't had to think about how to filter out water while we were hungry and thirsty. We haven't had these things. It's a very, it seems appealing when you haven't had these things introduced to you, but when you understand and you start to see that you really do become energized and taking something and doing something preemptively rather than waiting for any type of event like that. And I feel like this really does encapsulate the idea of what it looks like in terms of a chaotic environment, because in the China study, or that studied kind of and that kind of reviewed the Great Starvation of China. And I believe it was the 1940s or something like that, but I forget exactly when. But people got very hungry at a point, and I'm going to skip over all the politics or whatever and how much of this is kind of some of this could be inflated in terms of the particular book in general, but this particular event, I'm pretty convinced that it happened to some extent. And there was a particular time where they found this girl, and she was crying, and she and when they talked to her, they realized they realized that she had her essentially she had her brother's toys or something in that nature, and they asked her, they said, "Hey, what happened to your brother?" And She said I ate him. I like that was like I would like this is the idea of what could happen. I think people should understand in terms of when to act and when to kind of, and how to act, because this idea of society ending, it won't look good. It won't be appealing. A lot of the people and the communities that we claim to care for, they will suffer, many of them the most. So I really want people to understand that, and I'm sorry for anybody who's like, kind of, I didn't provide any trigger warnings there, but it's important that people really do look at that. And moving forward, in terms of how to move forward, what we need to do to move forward, you can survey 100 people on the street about whether society is moving in the right direction, and they'll all say no. Like, they'll all say no, or I'm not gonna comment on who would say yes, but the idea is like they'll all say no, right? It's not moving in the right direction. And when you ask what's being done about it, the rational ones in that group, they'll say, I don't know. I don't know. And I had this moment. I literally had this moment in the 2008 housing crisis where I talked to my mother. I was like, hey, we need to kind of work on this lifestyle and try to figure out how we can kind of come up with something, something that's more sustainable. And, my father had literally just left at that point, and I was in high school. But literally every time I'd bring it up, she would literally like avoid the conversation, and sometimes she would duck her head, like physically duck her head, and hold her head like, oh, I can't think about this right now. And it's just like, and I seen that, and every time I'd bring it up, it would happen, and I stopped talking about it eventually. And time rolled around, and we ended up having to sell the house in a very unfavorable way. And I remember in the selling, it got pretty ugly in terms of the actual selling. But what really stuck out to me was when I had a room and I had like really this I had this like cool sign on the door or whatever, and I started to kind of pack up my room or whatever, and I started to pick up my sign, and I was like, all right, let me just take everything. And my mother stopped me. She said, hey, leave the sign. And I just remember looking at her. I was like, it's like, what do you mean leave the sign? Like I'm not leaving the sign. Why would I leave the sign? And she said that they included that in the housing contract, that sign stays here. And I remember thinking in that moment, I was like, this is like, I sat there and I really just, I don't know, I had no reason to trust that you were going to correct anything. I had no reason of that, but I did it. I sat there and I basically just said okay, and I allowed myself to essentially go along with this. And this is the result. And this is the result to where it's like literally down to something as just so small. It was very small in terms of the sign itself. I wasn't like really against this. Like I wasn't like, it wasn't that the sign meant that much to me. Like I didn't even like, I could have gone out and got a new sign afterwards, but it was just the point of you like this idea of trusting that things would get done shouldn't have been left in hands that I knew were just not doing anything. And it's cost and it's a personal price that extends past what you would consider as normal bounds, right? Something that you would expect to pay, you'd expect this amount to be paid, and it extended beyond that, right? Like the house itself, it made sense, like, hey, the room or whatever, but it extended beyond that to where this isn't even logical to think that this sign would be involved in any way with the house sale. And I want you guys, I don't think that translates very well today if we allow this to happen today, because what's happening, what's going on, what we're seeing now, a lot of us are in this mindset of, this is called FAFO, right? And for those who don't know, just look it up. But there is no, this idea, like that whole concept of FAFO, like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you're in like another country, you can look at America and say that. But if you're in America and you say that, you kind of look stupid, like extremely stupid. I mean, well, honestly, this is this is your society. This is your society. Like, you go outside, you experience this. Like, what are you talking about? FAFO? Like, what? Like, it's kind of like I don't want people to understand. Like, there is no, like, if my son is starving, I'm not gonna say FAFO to the people around me. Like, that's my problem now. That's my thing, right? If my friends are suffering, I'm not gonna say FAFO. Like that whole concept of FAFO. It sounds like you guys are like really just mentally ill, honestly, and it's really like this is mentally ill enough to be disconnected from the actual consequence of what we're experiencing today. And it's something that we got to realize, like, it won't stop. Like the damage won't just be contained. It won't just be simply contained. It's not going to be in one area that makes perfect logical sense. It's going to expand outside of that. And we have to think about what we're doing now. We have to think about where we're at now and how we move forward. That's a very important part of today, okay? Because we can't just sit here and starve and say, look at what you did. Like that doesn't make sense. We all, just like in my story with the 2008 crisis, we know something's wrong. There are no politicians coming to fix it. I'm sorry. If you think that there's some kind of like some wondrous politician that could come in and save you, hey, you can, good luck. Really, good luck. I honestly hope the best for you. I just can't, I can't really say that I believe you enough to wait with you. So, this idea of what's happening, what we're going to do now, there's a framework in this particular piece, in this template. And if you take a look, ask me questions, email questions, or just ask questions in the comments, things like that, or just honestly, I think the best thing to do is, of course, like and comment on the video, please, and subscribe or whatever, but the best thing that you can really do is start to reach out to your physical community, okay? The internet could be shut down tomorrow. Like, literally, when it comes down to the powers of the president, they can shut down the internet. That's a very real thing that can happen. So if all of your capital, and another thing is they can also, if the concept of what is it? If the internet's shut down, that means your online banking is shut down. The concept of what you have now, you need to start realizing it's in your immediate it's in your immediate neighborhood. Look out and understand and reach out to people in your actual circle, your friends, your family. Also get to know your neighbors, because who's physically around you is going to become a lot more important, and these are things that you need to start to think about now, and it's really going to help translate into something that's going to be a more reliable currency for the future. That's going to be it for this particular video. Please take a look at the links in the description, and like I said, like, comment, share, and I hope the best. Thank you.
Where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
With the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that.